Greetings, everyone, to Weekly Wanderings for the week of September 15th, 2011. So today, as I'm driving around town here in Illinois where I live, I've noticed that we're in the beginnings of a new season, the season of autumn or fall. The temperature has dropped. Some places are even expecting their first frost tonight of the season. And I got to thinking about the changes that happen in the different seasons and how we all have seasons of our life. And I was drawn today to some verses from the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. Now, what's wonderful about the book of Ecclesiastes is that it is attributed to King Solomon, who was the king after his father, King David. And we know a couple of stories about Solomon, one of which is that he asked God for wisdom in line with his will. And because he didn't ask for power, money, or any of those things, God actually granted him that prayer request. And God gave him a wisdom beyond what most of us could probably ever hope for. There's another story about his wisdom, and that is the story of the two women who make claims on a baby, and they both want that baby, and Solomon, using his wisdom, realizes that the real mother of the baby would not want that baby hurt, and so he says he's going to cut the baby in half, at which the real mother of the baby says, she can have the baby, do not hurt the baby, and that was Solomon's way of finding out who the real mom was. So that's a story you may have heard from your childhood or Sunday school times or whatever. So that's who is the writer of this book of Ecclesiastes. And in the chapter that I want to read to you today, or not the whole chapter, but parts of it from chapter 3, these are sort of his general observations about life and the things that were happening. And I think they really fit where we are today. So I'd like to read to you from Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, starting in the 1st verse. Again, if I didn't say this before, some of you may know these words from a 1960s song. I'm not going to give you the title or the artist. I'm going to see if you can remember that as I read these words. Ecclesiastes 3. There is a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to harvest. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to rebuild. A time to cry and a time to laugh. A time to grieve and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to turn away. A time to search and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be quiet and a time to speak up. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have thought about this in the connection with the various kinds of work God has given people to do. God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, we cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded that there is nothing better for people than to be happy, to enjoy themselves as long as they can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose in this is that you should fear him. Whatever exists today and whatever exists in the future has already existed in the past, for God calls each event back in its turn. So, a little clue there at the end, that last word is actually in the word, in the lyrics, in the title of the song from the 1960s. Have you figured it out yet? That's right. It's the song Turn, Turn, Turn by the group The Byrds. And you may recall, pardon my voice, it goes something like this. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. and a time for every purpose under heaven. And then it continues, and it literally quotes some of what we just read. It's a great song. I encourage you to Google it or YouTube it or whatever you want to do, because I'm sure you can find it. Why are these the words that speak to me today when I think about the changing of the seasons? Well, for me, I know that we all have seasons in our life. And God knows that there are times in our life when we are grieving and times when we are dancing. He knows that there are times when we're gathering all our stones up, and there are times when we're scattering those stones all about. God knows that our life is a season that ebbs and flows as we go about our daily life. And I know and trust as a believer that what Solomon says here about God is true. And that is that whatever God planned in the past or the future exists today, because that's what God wanted it to be. And I don't know about you, but that brings me great comfort. You know, I think about God's words in Joshua and Jesus' words in the Gospel of Matthew. In Joshua, God says to him, "Do not be afraid. I am with you wherever you go." And in Matthew, Jesus says to his disciples in the Great Commission, "Remember this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So it doesn't matter if it was Joshua in our Old Testament times, the disciples at that time when Jesus was still alive, or for us today. We can take hope that in the times of our lives, all of the times of our lives, God is with us and Jesus is walking with us as well. And for me, when I have those times that I'm just not so sure about, you know, maybe the times that are difficult, sort of the times when I really do feel alone, I try to think back and remember God's words about being present with me. And I try to remember, but this is just a season in my life, and that the next season might be a whole lot different than the season I'm in now. So I guess what I want you to think about today more than anything else, really think about this week. What kind of season are you in right now? Are you in a season of joy and fellowship and abundance? Or are you in a season in your life that maybe is filled with sadness and sorrow and negativity? And it just seems like nothing is going right in your life. No matter if you're at your highest high or your lowest low, whatever season you're in, I want you to try and trust in the faith that you have in God through Jesus Christ. I want you to believe and know that God walks with you in whatever season of life it happens to be, whatever time it is in your life right now. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be with you today, and I look forward to being with you next week for our next weekly wanderings. Thanks so much for listening today, brothers and sisters. Have a great day, and may God bless you.